Universal Design for Learning, supporting all of your students. In this session, we're going to be looking at Universal Design for Learning in more depth. So, the Universal Design for Learning guidelines from CAST identify 3 levels. We're looking at removing barriers to access, highlighting strategies, so building, and then comprehension and self-regulation, so internalising the learning. So this is a scaffolding approach. So here are the main Universal Design for Learning guidelines. You can view these online at udlguidelines.cast.org. It's possible for you to download them, and they're also available in a variety of other languages. So you want to look at providing multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action and expression. So why are you doing this learning? What are you doing? And how are you doing it? So the first one we're looking at is engagement, the why of learning. How can learners contribute resources of interest? So think about opportunities that you have for learners to be able to share things that are relevant to them and their colleagues. So, for example, you could set up a free VoiceThread account or a Padlet wall, or maybe you're using Microsoft Teams or you have a discussion board. So you want to have somewhere where students can contribute things that are of interest to them. And this can be constantly changing. You'll find that some students contribute things and you want to make use of them year on year. And you might find things that are more ephemeral, that are only used perhaps for this academic year and are not relevant to students in other years. How can you reduce learners' anxiety to promote engagement? So you want to make sure that you're communicating frequently with the whole class as well as with individuals, because it might help to reduce stress and to encourage self-reflection. For some students, discussion boards can be overwhelming, so support students by providing summaries and highlighting critical points as well as facilitating those discussions. Make sure that you provide opportunities for small group discussions as well as large group sharing. For example, if you have a cohort of students with 300 students, consider breaking them into smaller groups for initial discussions in the way that you might do with a think, pair, share activity. What opportunities are available for learners to be actively engaged? So, if you were thinking about delivering a traditional lecture, you might want to encourage sharing by providing a back channel where learners can make comments and pose questions to each other as an ongoing part of course communications. If you're doing things wholly online, then make sure that if you're doing a synchronous session, it's not just you broadcasting to the students with no opportunity for them to ask questions. Are there any opportunities for self-assessment to increase comprehension? So, have you got any opportunities for the class to discuss assignments and rubrics? Do they understand how they're going to be assessed? Also, do your assignments encourage use of multimedia? This is something that obviously you can't fix overnight. You may already have assignments set for your course, but you might want to think about whether it's possible to do alternative assignments in future. Are you making use of data as well? Do you share any data with your students? And do your students make use of office hours? An interesting thing that we found whilst many people are teaching online is that they found that they have better attendance in their office hours than they would normally have with those opportunities being available to them on campus. The next slide is about representation, or the what of learning. So, are you making use of the digital options available within Blackboard? I'm not suggesting that you bombard your students by using every possible tool out there. You obviously want to think about what's pedagogically appropriate. However, some people only ever use the same format for all of their courses, and it might not always be the most appropriate one. So consider the tools that are there and what's going to be most appropriate for you and your students. Do you use multiple examples to activate prior knowledge? It's no good just repeating the same example if a student doesn't understand something. So try to think of alternative methods of means of explaining something. When you're presenting a lecture, is information presented in multiple formats? And again, are you making use of data? Which resources are the ones that are most used? Which formats are most used? And is there any relationship between accessing different forms of course content and student achievements? Obviously, when you're thinking about sharing videos, it's really important that you consider captioning for those videos. And you want to make sure that you're giving students access to PowerPoint slides. You might also want to discuss with them note-taking strategies. Some students may feel that if all the content is available online, they don't need to make their own notes because they can refer back to it. Obviously, that's time consuming and not all students would make the effort to return. So make sure that you discuss note-taking strategies with your students. For me, I particularly like the Cornell method of note-taking, and I will find an example to link so that you can see how that works. What you want to think about is that when students engage different modalities, they activate deep learning processes. So make sure they have access to the formats they need when they need them, regardless of their ability or the device they have. Then action and expression. So the how of learning. What types of opportunities do your learners have to communicate? How do you support students' understanding of assignments and task directions? Are there alternate ways to contribute during discussions? And then, are you making use of data? When are students submitting assignments? Is it always last minute? Is there any correlation between students who do formative assignments and their final grades? So, thinking about rubrics, do you have clear rubrics in your course? How do students understand what they have to do? I saw some interesting discussions online recently where people said that they'd found that by putting their rubrics into an interactive document, so they discussed using a Google Doc, I'd suggest using a Microsoft Word document that you host online, and then give the students opportunities to give examples so that you can see how they understand it, and they build up that group understanding of what they're expected to do. Do you have any small group activities? Perhaps you've got a narrated video to clarify the steps involved in an assignment. So, what else can we do to make our learning accessible? Assessment is an important part of the learning process, so how can we improve the accessibility of assessments? You obviously want to think about having clear, accessible assignment briefs that benefit all students. You can maybe provide example assessments for students to mark, offer ways for students to anonymously ask questions, think about improving the understanding of assessment tasks and building staff and students' shared understanding of the assessment. This then increases assessment performance for all students, but especially dyslexic and black and ethnic minority students, and improves assessment literacy and student confidence. It's really important that we make our expectations of what we want the students to do in an assessment task clear. Assessment isn't about tricking the student or deliberately withholding information. You can make an assessment challenging whilst also setting very clear expectations. Is there any choice in assessment? Student-centred learning suggests we should offer students constrained choices of how they undertake an assignment and meet the learning outcomes. So enable students to choose an assessment format they're most comfortable with and give students agency, a key factor in motivation and engagement. How might you provide choice in assessment to make it more accessible? Think about the options that might be available to you. In terms of assessment formats, you should choose authentic and appropriate means of assessing. Unseen exams, reports and essays are overused. Many other formats may be more fit for purpose. You could consider in-seminar assessments, posters, assessed blogs, portfolios, case studies, vivas, short answer tests, multiple choice and other computer-based tests, reflective accounts, logs, projects, video presentations, learning packages, annotated bibliographies, live briefs, and I'm sure there are many more that you can think of. It's recommended that you use a variety of formats throughout the programme. I hope that that's given you some good ideas to think about. I'd suggest that you go back through and maybe make some notes on the changes that you would like to implement in your course. Thank you.